Hi everyone, welcome back to the Snapshot Situation. I'm Gaston, and in today's episode, we'll explore street photography with cheap film point and shoots, in particular those with zoom lenses. If you're a beginner, or if you just want to try film photography without spending a fortune, you're in the right place. These cameras are budget friendly, but they're also lightweight and super easy to use. They're perfect for capturing candid moments on the streets. One of the best things about zoom point and shoots is that they look like tourist cameras. People won't feel intimidated when you're out snapping away, and they're incredibly light. Just use a wrist strap, keep the camera in your hands, and you're ready to roll. Their compact size means you can stash them in a coat pocket, and the low price means you don't need to worry about keeping them in pristine condition. Now I know today many people prefer a fixed focal length or prime lenses on their cameras, but back when these cameras were new, the zoom cameras were often the premium option. Sure, zoom lenses might be a tad less sharp and a bit less bright, but most of the time you won't notice the difference. And in street photography, sharpness depends more on movement blur and proper focus. And let's be honest, sometimes a tiny bit of blur in an image can look great as well. And the best part is that most zoom point and shoots are super affordable today. You'll likely pay a little bit more for a tested camera, but it's usually still a great deal. For my experience, it's usually better to choose the latest model of zoom point and shoot you can find. The zoom lens technology has evolved over time, and the cameras have gotten more compact. When picking the right one for you, try to look for semi-premium models rather than entry-level ones. The early models, especially the cheaper ones, tend to have loud film advanced mechanisms, which doesn't make them ideal for discreet street photography. And once you've got your hands on your new camera, make sure to check the manual. Understanding how the autofocus and the exposure work will save you from disappointments down the road. I really think zoom is an underrated feature for cameras in street photography. With a zoom that starts at 28mm, you can experiment with different focal lengths and find which one suits you best. Just remember to use the zoom consciously. Look at which focal length you're at and think about how it affects your framing and how you need to position yourself within the scene. Now let me share a few examples of zoom point and shoot film cameras that I've used over the years, along with some notes and their prices. These cameras are all budget friendly and easy to use. The first on the list is the Rollei Prego 90. From 1993. This chunky camera has a bright lens and makes sharp images throughout the zoom range. It's packed with modes and options, but the larger size could be a drawback for some. If you don't mind the larger camera, it's a solid choice. Next on the list is the Canon Prima 28V from 1994. This camera is a bit smaller and it has a zoom range up to 70mm, which I think is plenty enough. It's a bit older, so the autofocus is slower and a bit louder, but the form factor and the build quality are great. I paid only £19 for mine, but I've seen them go for up to £60. Next is a Fuji Zoomdate 1300 from 2002. This compact camera has the form factor of a bar of soap and it fits perfectly in a coat pocket. It has a fantastic lens, especially at wider settings. The exposures are accurate and so is the autofocus. The lens is not very bright, so you might need to use flash at night. The zoom range starts at 28mm and ends at 130mm, although the longer end of the zoom is not very sharp. Just be aware of potential reliability issues. So far I've had 3 of these and only one works correctly. I paid £15 for mine, but I've seen them go for up to £70 on eBay. Last on the list is the Pentax Espio 24 EW from 2003. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this camera. It has a very wide lens and great ergonomics, but the lens is very soft at its wide setting. It does offer a surprising amount of useful options, like exposure compensation and spot metering. I think it's more of a special use camera. You can find it for up to £120 and I paid £50 for mine. For those who want to do more research, I'll put more camera models up on the screen. Just remember not to pay too much for a camera that you're not sure works correctly. Now let's see one of these cameras in action. I'll be shooting in Glasgow with a GoPro and the Canon Prima 28V. I'll try and give you a sense of how I use these cameras for street photography. While I'm out there, let's discuss what I think makes for an interesting picture in street photography. First, I try to capture people's faces and expressions. I think they're the most engaging part of the image. Second, I try to look for patterns and texture in the environment. And finally, I try to keep an eye out for interesting light, which I think can make or break a scene.
Sorry mate, do you mind if I take a picture of the wee dogs?
Oh, that's too bad, mate. Just go get it.
Cheers. Have a good day.
Let me share some personal quick tips for beginners starting out street photography. Number 1. Be patient. Sometimes you won't get any good pictures for a day, and that's okay. The most important part is getting out there to photograph and not to focus too much on the results. Be respectful. Always consider the privacy and feelings of the people you're photographing. Be observant. Keep an eye out for unusual or interesting scenes, and don't be afraid to experiment with new angles and perspectives. Be ready. Always have your camera on hand and turned on so you don't miss any fleeting moments. And that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you found the video useful and it has inspired you to grab a cheap camera to start exploring street photography with film. I know having an affordable point and shoot with me when I started out really made the difference. Now I'd love to hear about your experiences using zoom lenses in street photography or any of your cheap film cameras that you've discovered. So please leave a comment below. Your insights and stories might inspire someone else. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next snapshot situation.